comes to streamers, I feel like there's two different types.
Well,
There's this type.
that is
I did my whole speech about how I need.
that is just fantastic, and definitely not what I was about to go to. How
So, what does this guy do? Or maybe what
sprinklers
does
are made.
this guy do? Or even, what does this guy do? Well,
What's
that's
this
what
guy
we
do?
explain in this video. What's up, my friends? Welcome to a brand new video. In this one, I'm explaining kind of what soldiers do at different levels of enlisted rank. All right, so we're gonna be talking about some different enlisted ranks. I have
Obviously, I
a few
kicked the
demonstration ones here. If I don't have a
150,
demonstration one, there'll probably be like a little
670,
pop-up somewhere of
Paw
showing what the rank
600.
looks like, and I'll explain it to you a
break
little
down
bit.
the matrix,
But you're probably curious
basically
as
gonna
to
get
like,
into
what do you
heavy
do as a
math
private? What
in
do you
a
do as a sergeant?
in
What
a
do you do as
hurry.
this
There's
rank, right?
a lot of
Only
them,
on the
you gotta
enlisted
take 'em
side.
out.
That's what we're
Like,
gonna do. But
Lou
without
Brown
further
is
ado,
still
let's
around,
dive
right?
into it. And we're
They're
starting off
nearly
with
floating
blank
around.
slate, right? If you're an E1, you don't have any rank on your
Then you
chest,
got a lot
on
of
your uniform.
equations
It's
in
just
those. So
an empty
is it
Velcro or
150
hook and fastener.
here?
It's
Absolutely,
Velcro,
because
right?
it's
It's Velcro.
blooming, and
You don't have
it's
any rank
years of
on your
experience
chest
of
anywheres.
how
You're just
everything
a private.
is.
Well,
All brackets
those
and
individuals,
tongue
we should
depressors.
probably still bundle in with the E2s that actually does have something on their chest.
I want to
Little
make a note.
Mosquito
It's like,
wings, your
you
little
have a doctor
kind of a
in town.
chevron thing.
Obviously, the doctor's
technically a
not trained to
private
do my
second class,
job
but
in the
nobody
stone
calls it
mill,
a private
but he's
second
probably
class.
dealt with
They
everybody
still get called
in that
privates.
stone mill because
Basically,
I'm from a small
your
town.
E1s and E2s,
Science
for the most part, get treated
works that way.
practically the same.
Should see
These
the
soldiers are stuck
same
doing
thing, or
whatever.
how the
all right?
files
If
on the
there is
graphs
some
of the
crappy
Celt
detail,
do,
if there is missions that need to be
there's
done,
not a lot of
these
difference.
soldiers
And if you're better than
are
a lot
stuck
of
doing it.
doctors, when you're
You
going,
basically have to earn
here's
your
good
keep, right? You're
people, I'm
brand new
good
in the army.
people,
You have
you
no
are here, I am
experience.
here.
So you have to build
Experience
that
first.
experience. The only way you're going to build
There's
experience
math
is by
involved
doing
here.
things. And
Don't
doing the crappy details, doing the good details, whatever the case is, that's how you build experience. So those E1s and E2s, you
That's
just
how
kind of
it
get
happens.
stuck
Neutral,
with the crappy
plus
end
one.
of the stick. You get stuck with all the
There was
crappy
a little bit of
details,
negative
all
there,
the
but
work. Anytime they need
that
someone to go
happens.
do something,
It's life.
they're probably looking to the lower enlisted guys for sure. If they need
Take
more
it to
than
the
that,
chaplain
they'll
and
probably
shotgun.
grab more. But sometimes they alternate too with other ranks
do
as well.
Muhammad,
So
that's why
you know,
they
but
train
definitely
the
expect that you're going to have to do a lot of crappy stuff for a while until you kind of
670-1
build
per
up a
paw
rank.
600.
Now, when you build up
Generals
to E3
are gonna
or private
be
first class, which I don't
years
have one of those, so it's on
grooming
the screen, but
and
that does get a
Boom.
little bit better. You may not notice it, but it does get a little bit better. You're probably not the first choice for them to go and send off to a crappy detail unless
Like, when
you
I have
happen
the
to be just
chessboard,
a
I gotta
crappy
say,
soldier,
these are
because
pawns.
Sometimes
Okay.
it doesn't matter what your rank is.
From
If you're someone
E1
that just
to
messes things
90
up all the
days,
time, well,
there
the
could be
NCOs
some
want to make
things
sure
that
that you kind of
happen.
learn from that
All right,
and
obviously
try to
there's
get
some
better, so
standouts.
you are
This
still getting
is
stuck with all the
basically
crappy
fusion
details.
at this part in time.
But if
from
you are proving
Genesis.
yourself, you're working hard, and you're doing
The
the
math
best that you
starts
possibly
over from
can,
zero.
then they might try to, give more of the crappy
We're
details to
talking about
those
Terminator
still
Gambit
privates
about
and everything like that in the
reciprocals
private
on
first
times
class, the
to
E3,
say pro
may be able to
tricks,
slide out of a few of
development
those.
things.
But you still don't
One
have a whole lot
electron,
of authority.
E1
You don't
to
have a whole
E2
lot of
is a
responsibilities as a
movement.
private first
What can I
class.
do in that distance?
It's a little bit
Can I
better
get
than a
out of
private
the
back
way?
in E1,
Does it
E2,
have
but
energy in there?
not a whole lot more.
Absolutely.
It does
Fusion
actually get
is
a little bit better
hydrogen
when
to
you get to this
helium
guy. When you move up to
to
E4 or a specialist,
118
it does
of
actually start to get a little bit better.
heavy.
Now you get a little bit more responsibility. Now you're
Kind of an
probably the
idea of
babysitter for the privates, sure.
anything.
But you actually
West
have a little
Point,
bit more responsibility.
Paris
now.
Islands,
You might be more of the go-to
Area
individual
51.
to do the more important missions,
Me,
the
this
ones
guy,
that they
and
really
anybody
need
else in
someone
the room.
reliable.
Poker tables.
If you were someone really reliable as a private too, you could have ended up that situation. But hopefully at this point, your specialist individuals are the ones that are kind of the more reliable individuals and the ones that they're going to count on to get things done. Some examples of that is, let's say, like in my MOS, right? As an AD Mike, the specialists that actually have proven themselves and everything like that, I may trust them a little bit more to kind of look after the privates. Again, kind of go back to the babysitter thing, I guess. But we might look up to them a little bit better to, making sure that, things get accomplished, right? So I might give the taskings out to a specialist or someone who's a higher ranking specialist to say, hey, these are the things we gotta get done. Can you see to it that, things are happening and, have so-and-so help you, get so-and-so to do this, so-and-so to do that. So you have a little bit more authority.
Of a
Probably
lot
often
of
you're not
mass,
doing as much of the
how I
crappy
just said the
details. You
stone
might still
mill
have it. And definitely
is
if you're a
area
messed
under a
up,
curve.
jacked up
How do I
E4
get
specialist
vector
that is
positions?
not
How do
very
I
reliable,
get
then you might get
timelines
stuck
on
with
those
a lot of
things?
the
As
crappy
I'd say,
details.
what's physical
But
about
if you are reliable and pretty
Then I
good,
go
then you
about
might be
that.
limited.
I'd
You might
start
get none,
this
you might only
before
get a
you
few
had to
here and
actually
there,
get
it might just
to
kind of vary on the
build
leadership in the
into
unit.
the
So,
cut
thanks
coefficients
to kind of get better
on
here.
saws
Maybe we'll have the
to the
E4
output of the
Mafia,
tread
Sham
line,
Shield, right?
how that is
A lot of times
congruent
because the
with
privates
loss.
are getting stuck with all kind of things, and the
And
specialists aren't
when
having
you
to
get
do all
the
those
housing
kind of things.
cost,
So, like,
wife
oh man, specialist
versions,
so-and-so gets a
I'm
sham out
talking
of
about
this
some
one.
officers,
Well,
which are
they've built their way
NCOs
up to their
by
rank a little
any
bit,
other
so,
variable,
yeah, they kind of earned it a little bit.
vector
Now, we
positions
should probably
versus
mention
common
E4 Corporal,
observation
right?
of sharps
For the
and
most part,
something.
it's only a little bit more authority than the
As far as
specialist
rockers
in
by
a lot
years
of
the
cases,
same
not
way
always,
when
but
it's your first day
in
of
some
assault.
cases, sure, they
Got
kind of
cover,
are like
got
this
sharps,
in-between
got
of a specialist and a
glass
sergeant.
recon.
Sometimes they task them with tasks that normally would be done by a
Sometimes they're
sergeant,
just
sometimes
there.
they might task them with things that would be done by a specialist. They're kind of almost like both ranks. They're almost like a sergeant and a specialist in some ways, and they feel like, hey,
Well, I
we
do
can
the
just give
maintenance
this guy,
rotations because
you
they're
know,
real.
both of these
You
jobs.
will
There might be things
evolve
like, you know, they're
with
like,
this
hey,
machine.
that soldier's a corporal,
Right,
so
it's-
let's go ahead and have
when we
them,
get to
you know, lead
the
this
night
team, or let's
watching
have
you as a
them
pawn
take
on
care
the
of
first
this, you
few
know,
days
this guard duty
of
thing or whatever, and be in
the
charge of them or
catwalk,
whatever. But then
checkouts,
sometimes you're just
the
stuck doing
screw
regular
bolts,
old
the brakes.
specialist
These
stuff,
are all
even though you're not getting paid extra
some
for it,
heavy
you have
duty
more
stuff about
responsibility with it.
watching
That does definitely vary. I mean, there's probably
that
some
for the
like
first
infantry
weekend.
units, certain combat arms
for
units
the
where
first,
corporal does get
second
a little bit
weekend.
more authority,
Are
almost
these
more like your
still
sergeants in certain other units.
in
But definitely,
those
you know, it does
fields?
depend on the unit, depend on the leadership.
Should be
Now, once you
congruent.
do finally move up to this guy, to your sergeant, now you do actually have a little bit more authority, but you also have, you know,
Which one
more
do I use for that?
responsibility.
Which one?
So now you're possibly like a team leader. Maybe even, you know, after you've been a sergeant for a while, you might even be a squad leader. It just
This
kind
is
of
what this book is
depends
about.
on your unit, at
Right.
who they have, what
So
they're
you're
short
gonna
on.
make that
Because
jump.
there's often cases too where
that one,
you
right?
have a sergeant that's been a sergeant for a while,
So
so
just
they might
getting-
be a section sergeant.
How
they
would
might
you
be
set
a
this up?
squad leader,
What
whatever
math
the case
could I
is.
put in this
But now
square
you know you have authority, right?
by
You
parallel?
are probably more of the person that has to
Find
tell
a
the soldiers what
diagram
to do.
would
You're
be
less of the worker bee now.
diagram.
I mean, not always, but
But if
less
you're
of
too
the worker
close
bee
to
and more of your
grunge
supervisor
or
kind of a
NCO
role.
or
And a lot of people, you know,
it
especially
can
when they're new
catch you real
sergeants, they
hard.
try to kind of play both
So,
fields. You're like,
yeah,
oh, I'm not going to be one of those NCOs
you do
that
one of
just
those
watch, you know,
differentials.
over what's going
They
on or
have a
whatever,
lot of
and they try to get
similarities.
more active
Lots
with
of
doing
them.
things. But after a while, they start to
Safety
find
guy,
out that, hey, if I'm
not a
really tied up
manager.
with working on
Manager,
this with the
not the
soldiers,
safety guy.
I can't keep track of what these other
Because
soldiers are having to
maintenance
do over
guys,
in this other area,
I
and
gotta
now
have the
they're just kind
boss
of off roaming
check
free.
that. I had
So
to have that
sometimes you have to
conversation
balance
with
that
them.
out. Sometimes
I
you have
said
to
it
do a little
was-
bit of work, you know, with the soldiers
I
to
rewrote
pull
the
your
cell
weight a little bit
programs.
and kind of, you know,
I
not
reorganized
seem
the
like you're
list
lazy
to-
or
it was
whatever the
need to be
case
fixed,
is.
plus
And
some
sometimes you do
training
need
stuff.
to, you know, just kind of step up
Laying
and be a
blocks,
leadership
twisting.
position and
I get that
check
the
on
kids
soldiers,
still
make sure
need
they're
to
doing
do
the right
that.
things.
I am
Maybe
not going
make
to
sure
do
they're
that
doing things
anymore.
right
The cut
the right way, so
coefficient
we don't have to do it
is about
the second
my
or
shift
third time.
to perfect.
But
as it
especially
can
while
be.
you're new, right?
Catch
You're
the
still
date.
kind of
I want you to
stuck
run
in
it,
that mentality,
'cause
like
you're
maybe
gonna
you were a
see zero
specialist where you
pullouts
want
with
to
3
get your
crew.
hands dirty and get
You're
into the
gonna
work,
see
and
where
that's,
I
that's
didn't
fine,
do
right? That's
that,
okay to do,
and
but
I'm giving you
can't
every
let it
cut
get in the way
coefficient
of
there.
also being a leader and also
I
making
should be
sure
in
that
better
your
rock or
other
worse
soldiers that you're
rock.
responsible
Check their
for
skins.
are
We're
doing the right
losing
thing.
money inside of there.
So now you're like putting charges
Or
to soldiers.
they
Like I
are
said, maybe you
good
have like
because
3, 4
zero.
soldiers, maybe
Because
more. It
that
just kind of
has to
depends.
be
That's
what that
usually
is.
kind of a
Cameras
common
overhead.
range, you know, especially for a new
But
sergeant.
you would have that
maybe
vector
have like 3 or
position.
4
And if I
soldiers
see
that are
them
kind of
coming
like
up,
part of their
stuff
team
was
that you probably have to do
breaking,
counseling
I wanted
statements
12
for
footers,
monthly
things.
ones, as well as if they do negatively, then you have to write that counseling statement for them, and you have to, you know, maybe conduct some training with some soldiers and lead the training.
This
and
is
you might
the
be in
CT
charge of like some
paradox. You
guard
have to
duties,
start
and different kind
here.
of tasks like that.
And it's hard to
Also,
find
some
those
crappy
things.
ones too. Sometimes you stuck
It
being in
is.
charge of the
Like I
crappy
said,
detail.
it's-
You get stuck being in
that's
charge
the
of the
program,
CQ. You know,
but the
being
IMA
the
walkthrough
24-hour
starts the
duty at
second
the
you
barracks
walk into the
and being the
building,
one in
and it's
charge
gonna
of
hit
1 or 2 other
turbulence
soldiers that are
flow.
runners and
They are
make
chest
sure the barracks
moves,
are fine. Now, when you do move
E4
up to staff sergeant, it does seem like a little bit of a good increase,
spectrums
right?
of Dave.
Now you should not be anywhere
It's-
close to the same
I
level
can
as
break
these
this
guys.
down
Really,
anytime I
not,
want.
not saying like put
I
him
have
down
to
kind of
deal
thing. I'm
with
talking about as
him
far as like
at
you
the
know
board meeting
responsibility
in the
wise
casino.
and what
We
you're
can
going to be
do
doing.
free.
Now
here
you're
for
probably
now.
like a
This is
section sergeant, maybe
wild
even in
out
some
here.
cases,
Welcome.
if you've been a staff sergeant for a while and they're short on certain people, you might even be a platoon sergeant. So now you're in charge of more soldiers. Maybe now you're in charge of like 10, 20 soldiers. It kind of just depends on the makeup of your platoon, what unit you're in, your MOS, all that kind of stuff like that. But now you have a lot more responsibility.
Sergeant,
Now
yeah.
you're more looked up to, and you are going to be the go-to NCO for getting a lot of training done. Because the next one up from here, right, they're probably like the platoon sergeant, so you're like the next one in line. Platoon sergeants, which I'll talk about in a little bit, are more of your ones that are kind of looking over the big picture for the platoon and handing down the tasks to these staff sergeants to make sure the platoon is carrying them out. These individuals are the ones making it happen, right? They're the ones that have been told what we have to accomplish, what has to get done, and making sure it gets seen through to get accomplished. These are also sometimes your drill sergeants, right? You can have drill sergeants here too, but most commonly, here is where you want the
So
drill
we
sergeants.
can
But
check that
in
out.
situations where they are shorthanded on drill sergeants or certain people volunteer for it sometimes, then you can be drill sergeants here. But this is more of your common
snowmobile
one.
gonna-
Also
look,
recruiting as well. So your recruiters are often
in
the staff
patrol,
sergeant.
I would
is
say, to
E6.
the area around the
So
stone
then
mill.
from here, it then moves on to an E7, which is a sergeant first class.
I try to
Those
switch
individuals
people
are
around
typically
as much as
your
pick up
platoon
nails
sergeants.
and
Your sergeant first classes are the ones receiving
there really is a
the
limit
information from like the
to
first sergeant for the
what
company
it
or
is.
the troop or
And I
whatever.
try my
And
best
they're the
to
ones
do
that have to make sure that
companies.
tasks are getting done and it gets delegated properly.
I have to do
Kinda
it. I
definitely
can
goes
figure
down
it
like
out
a
from
sequential
footage.
kind of order,
I
right?
mean,
Rank
it's
kinda-
not hard. As
kinda
soon as I
starts
have a
to go
number, somebody
downhill
slips
of,
it,
$11
$11
a
a square foot,
dishing out
blocks
the
have to
orders,
be over this, but I
make
don't
sure
know the
things
cost
get
of those
done.
blocks.
But
You gotta
your
tell me.
platoon
I can
sergeants
factor
are
it.
the ones that are receiving it
I can
directly
hit
from
that,
like
but there's a
your
reason
first
I
sergeant.
don't.
First,
Because
it's like, hey,
it's
we got to
gonna
get this
burn
thing
down,
done,
firstly.
as far as,
Secondly, I'm gonna have to break
where
the
we want
rules
to
and
be
go
as a whole
full
company
dark
or
web
troop or
on
whatever.
this.
And
I'm trying to
platoon
catch up on
sergeants
the
at their
positive,
levels
which is
are
the
the ones
hardest
that are
thing to
attending the
do.
meetings
Yeah,
to
great
talk about how it's
calculation.
going to get done and kind of get the taskings and, kind of divvy things up.
You got Among Us?
So a
yet?
lot
Oh,
of
yeah,
responsibility at
Among Us,
E7.
Space
When you're
Quest.
at that sergeant first class, you're kind of a big deal, and you kind of have to really step it up definitely. Sometimes even sergeant first classes have to fill in often as
When you
maybe
do
the
that
first
stuff in
sergeant, right? If
town,
they are
you
the
come
higher
at 'em
ranking
like I drill
sergeant first
sergeant,
class, and the
no
first
drill
sergeant
sergeant when you
is
run
gone
the
somewheres
treadline
or
or
whatever the
working
case
in the
is, they
dollar
may end up being
store,
like the acting
smoking
first sergeant.
Joes or
Now, however, if that company or whatever has a master sergeant, then that one is most likely the individual that will kind of fill in as the acting
because
first
they're
sergeant when the
in
first
camp.
sergeant's
I
gone.
want my
Master
Sawyers,
sergeant is the next
Jack,
rank up, your E8s.
Pack
But your E8s
Shoots.
can also be the first sergeant. But first, let's talk about the master sergeants.
When I'm
Your master
doing
sergeant is
my
probably going
overhead,
to be like,
I want
I've seen
somebody
cases
who's going
where
to do
they are
the
in charge
marketing
of the motor
off of
pool,
me,
right? They're the
operating
individual that
a saw,
is in charge of all of the motor
working
pool,
the
right?
rock,
So they're in charge of the maintenance
putting
people,
in
in
the
charge of
M1s
anybody
and
else, and they're
M2s
also
for me to be like,
overall
you want to
responsible
not
for
just
the
buy
motor pool
this
as a whole.
rock. This is
Kind of
about
tasked down
quality
from the
and
first
speed.
sergeant, right?
This is
Obviously, the
about
first sergeant is the one in
functions
charge
and
of
values,
everything, but
and I have
then it
those
gets kind of
for my
delegated down to the master sergeant.
Those
Master
are the
sergeant
dollar
may be
bills.
like
See how
the
much
motor sergeant
better
or whatever
that
kind
would
of term
come
they may
into
use, and
tips,
that person is
and
kind of in
you
charge
like
of that.
you tell them a
Master
story about
sergeants
how we
can
made
also
the rock,
be
how
more
we
in like staff
we
roles.
set your
I mean, a
store
lot of these
for
roles
them,
can be really like
whether
this
it's
staff sergeant
private
could be in a staff
or we're
role.
doing
The sergeant
industrials
first class
for
could be a staff
setting
role.
up for
But if
crews.
your master sergeant
They
isn't
buy
like
a
usually
whole
like in the maintenance
tractor
section
trailer,
or
pallets
certain
and
other kind
stuff,
of roles, usually they're working at the
clean
staff
mill,
level, so that means they're
timelines and
working at like
rotations
that
will keep
brigade
it
or
that way.
battalion level.
The first thing they
Different
tell
things
you is
like
the
they
bunks
could be like the
exploded,
training
then you get
NCO, right? They could be the person that's in charge of making
then
sure
that is
that the
every
unit
week,
is getting the proper training it's
every
supposed to be
day
getting
at
and
the-
scheduling the training through the proper channels to make sure that we have everything planned out for the field exercise or classes coming up or whatever. So they could potentially
You can't
be
beat
like the
Bob on
training
the saw
NCO.
because he's the one
That
that
could
trained
even
you on the
still be
saws.
a
And
staff
they can
sergeant
bump
though,
them
or
off
sergeant
into
first
another
class.
set anyways.
But hopefully at
But
some
if you
point that
can't go
master sergeant is
nowheres,
hoping to become a first sergeant, as that
you're
first
gonna be
sergeant
better
is
than
usually
they are
in charge of
on
that
speed.
troop or that
Usually
company or that battery,
they'll tell you
depending on
you're
what type of
fast,
unit it is.
and I can't
They're
put
the senior
anything else in
NCO
here.
for that unit level.
Tell you things like
So again, kind of going back to how things
before
kind of
you
stair
go,
step down,
because
right?
they've heard the
These are the
number
individuals
you
that are
wanna
probably
hit.
receiving information as a whole from
and they
like
give you
the
that number.
sergeant major,
I
right?
told
So
them to
they're
give you the number.
getting
I
the
give you
taskings
the.
as
Give
far
you,
as
I mean, you care about
how
what
the
he said.
mission
You
needs to
care about what
accomplish
you
at
do.
each
You care
company,
about.
troop, battery level,
That's theirs.
and it gets handed
You'll
down to
hear
the first
things
sergeants
like,
to kind of relay, hey, this
Hey man,
troop or
Tim,
this
this is my
company
last
or
day in 2
battery is
weeks,
going to be in
and you
charge
find
of
out that
getting this
the
part of the mission
boss
done.
is never
This other
even
one's going to be in charge of
pulled
this part of
down.
the mission, and so on and so forth.
And
So
you're running
they're
this
handing the missions
system
down to them, and then it's up to the first sergeant
because
to
of course I
then
would.
kind of divvy that work up between the platoons to make sure that as a whole we can accomplish the mission. Someone might be in that first sergeant role usually for maybe like a year, maybe 2 years, it just depends. Often you don't want to have a first sergeant in charge of that specific, troop, company, or battery
That's
for too long, because
where
then
the
I know things kind
Masons
of get
and the
complicated a little
Marines
bit in
and
some
the
ways.
cops and
So
the
typically a year, maybe 2 years, you usually don't have a first sergeant being in
lodge
charge of that
meeting on
same troop
Wednesday,
or company or
hump day,
battery
the particle,
for that long,
the-
right, before they either move on to another one or they move up in position. Because that next level up is a sergeant major. That sergeant major could also probably be in a staff position. That one is usually like maybe
I got a 5
the sergeant major for the
It's
S3,
right
which
here.
is like,
This
the
is
intel
one.
individuals, or they're in charge of the whole
every STEM problem
major
locked
kind of
up
a
in
thing.
one NCO
Not to be
board
confused
trading
with
for
the command
business
sergeant
models,
major, which
small
we'll talk
business
about that in a little
models,
bit.
and
But
landscapers
that
now
sergeant
up into
major,
a house system,
typically
which
that's
carries
more of a staff
strong
kind of
force,
role.
weak
When you're
force,
a sergeant major and not a command
electromagnetism,
sergeant major,
gravities,
you're working
erodes
somewhere as a
conjecture,
battalion at
you know,
brigade,
everything.
maybe at division or whatever, in some
Marshmallow
kind of,
chest.
main senior NCO role, but not at the level where
We need
you're
that marshmallow.
a command sergeant
you
major that's in
in
charge
calculus.
of a larger unit. Sergeant majors that I've
I'm
seen
making
are like
observations.
someone that's in
That's the
charge of like
play.
the S3,
If I
like in
want to
that
make that
example.
boot
I've seen
camp over
a
there
sergeant
because
major
there's
where
an
they are in
abundant
charge
set of
of
skills
the
over me
training,
there,
but
and
for the
that's
training for
the
that entire units,
inventory
right?
on
So if they're
stock of
a battalion level
how
maybe,
the
right?
standard
Then
models
that is
run,
the
how I
battalion
can compare SAMs
training
against the
NCO,
calculus
or
on
maybe the
different
battalion
variables
schools
of
NCO
sets.
or whatever.
That's
Could
what
be
you
that sergeant
expect
major
them
in
to
some
be
cases.
doing.
But usually it's some sort of staff position. There's somewhere's working up at brigade or up at battalion or maybe
You'll
up
be
at
in a
division
room
doing
by
something
yourself.
really important. And
Then
eventually,
you'll be in
if
a
they,
room with other people.
are selected, then they become a command
Then
sergeant
there
major. So
are
now
standard
they're in
models of
command,
rooms
I guess you
where
can kind of
combinations
say,
of those things
a unit.
play off.
That is usually done
And
at that
if
brigade
those
level
things
or
are
that
correct
battalion
or
level
not
or that
correct,
division
somebody
level.
is. Usually the
Post
higher
level
on they
even,
are,
right?
the better
Technically,
it
actually,
is to the
post is
sharps
lower
and the
than division.
lawful
So if
orders.
I say division
That's
before
what
that,
it's
but division would be
lawful
actually be one
order
of the higher ones.
systems.
And
I
then
go time on
garrison
fraud
commander
case
and the
on
garrison
those
sergeant major
juries with
is like
like
the
you can
post
bring
sergeant
12
major.
Texas judges
But
in
those
here,
are your
or we can
individuals
use
usually that
that
are
for
command
the
sergeant majors.
Chinese
They
safety
have a high
operations
responsibility
because
over
that's how
that
math
battalion,
works.
that division, whatever the case
Calculus,
is.
training,
Obviously, those individuals
masons,
probably want to work
degrees,
up to
timelines,
the high
without
responsibility
making it
of
worth
being
it,
a
though.
division
Like,
command
the
sergeant
MGs
major.
there on the floor.
Very, important
Stand.
individual, making a lot of important, kind of decisions, working alongside with, whatever that.
I gotta play him,
probably a
like,
general,
to the
like if they're at a division
psychologist,
level,
or-
then they probably have someone that is the division commander, which is
Always
probably like a
out.
general.
There's
That individual may be like a 2-star,
45,
3-star, whatever the
personally,
case might be.
and you get there
So there are different levels of that command sergeant major. It could be a battalion, brigade, division, garrison sergeant major. That garrison sergeant major, though, is almost more like a mayor, right? I mean, they're working alongside with the garrison commander, which might be like a 1-star or 2-star or something along those lines, just depending on the size of the installation and
33.
the size of the units and everything like that. But
my
they're kind of like the
suggestion
mayor.
is,
They're not really like in charge
dude
of
said
the
you're gonna do
entire
policies
units
change,
that
give
are
me
on
a
that
call
installation. They
inside
are
here.
in charge of that
I like
post,
to poke
so
the
they
bear every
do
once
have
in a
say
while,
so
slap
as far as like
a Marine
policies
recruiter, see
that
what
go into
happens.
place with that post and all the kind of stuff that go into effect on that installation. But they are not in charge of those different units. That comes down to the division sergeant majors, the division commanders for
Like I
those
said,
levels.
I'm too
Those ones
New
kind
York,
of
I'm too
work with
hillbilly,
a higher up
I'm
from
too
bigger army
anything
stuff.
else to be exactly
So
what I
garrison
am.
sergeant
Let's
major,
race.
garrison commander,
It's just that
post
simple.
commander, post command sergeant major. Those individuals are more like your mayors that are kind of in charge of policies and everything with that
a
installation
town-
and in charge of that installation.
When I
but
go
not
to the
units
doctor in
necessarily.
town again, is
So,
that bar.
I
PhD
think that
starts
kind
at
of
the
gives a
top
good
levels of
summary as far as,
education,
what this guy
thesis,
does,
standard
this guy
models,
does, this guy
calculus,
does, and all that stuff like
masters.
that. You might want to
When you
know,
look
like,
at
at
a
what
doctor over 8
level do you
years,
start
where
getting more leadership? What does this
if I've seen
individual do
things
when you
common
once you get to
prime
that
in
rank?
doctors,
There
how do
are
I hit
probably a ton of
the
other examples,
masters
right? I'm
by
just kind of
this,
shooting
or a
from the hip as far
bachelor?
as some of the examples I gave you. There
Or
are a ton
somebody
more
just
examples.
out of high
Don't
school,
think that just because I
straight
didn't mention a
into
specific
anywhere
example
where the
that
graph,
that's not something that
what we
exists
fight
or whatever.
for
No,
inside
I
here
just didn't
says
mention it.
GED,
There's a ton of
America,
examples that
says
probably could be
math,
out there.
do the
So there
difference,
are a lot of
topologies
different
on
levels as far as
trajectories.
responsibilities. This is just
Be
to give you a
general,
general idea of
however,
some
here,
potential
but
possibilities. All right, it's not
speculative to
the
say that
end
it's
all
for
be all
sure
example,
that
and
number,
if I didn't mention
just
it, then
'cause I
it's
have
not
to
a thing that
allow
happens at that rank. No, I'm just giving you some good
Heisenberg
examples for your curiosity. Individuals, especially that want to join the Army, and you're wondering at what stage, what rank do I start doing this, or do I start doing that? If you have questions as far as, hey, what rank does this, or what rank does that, just leave those down in the comments. Either I'll try to respond to you. I'm sure there's a ton of other veterans or people that are currently in the military that might be able to respond to you. And